Is the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Carter, for 5 minutes.
Administrator Reagan, thank you for being here. Appreciate your presence here. Appreciate your presence in my district at the Georgia ports last week. I'm sorry that I wasn't invited, but my staff found about it the night before, and they were able to get there, so I appreciate them being there. But thank you for being there. You saw what an economic engine the Georgia ports are to not only to our area and the southeast part of Georgia and to our state, but the entire southeast United States. And the impact reaches all the way up into the Ohio Valley. So that's one of the reasons that I'm so concerned, because we've had a lot of growth and prosperity that's come to our district, and I'm concerned about some of these new rules that and regulations that are being pushed by the administration. I don't want to see that deterred. I don't want to see that growth and prosperity deterred. No one cares more about clean air than I do. And I say that sincerely. Where you were at is about 2 miles from where I grew up. I grew up right down the river from where you were at last week. And, you know, I would have people, when I was in college, come home and visit with me, and we had so many paper mills, they say, "What's that smell?" And I said, "That smells money." That's what it is, and that's what it was to us. The smell of a paper mill was money. And it put bread and milk and bread on our tables. I worked in the paper mill. My dad worked in it for 33 and a half years, and it was important. Just as these things that you saw this past week are important to our economy, and that's why I'm just concerned about the impact it's going to have, particularly the particulate matter rule, where the new air quality standards are that you're proposing for PM 2.5. For particulate matter particles that measure 2.5 micrometers or less in diameter. Even the EPA says that the United States has some of the cleanest air in the world, that we have done a good job. I believe there's a chart, you know, on your website that shows alongside the dramatic economic growth and even vehicle miles traveled, even through that, we've been able to accomplish some of the cleanest air in the world. And that's why, again, I'm just concerned about these proposed standards and proposed changes. You know, there have been some questions about the rulemaking process, and I'm concerned about the rulemaking process too. But I want to mention that in 2001, President Obama withdrew an EPA proposal to reconsider ozone standards, citing, and I quote in his words, "the importance of reducing regulatory burdens and regulatory uncertainty, particularly as our economy continues to recover," unquote. Looking at the proposals, and do you recognize, as President Obama did, that the president, that EPA can consider regulatory costs and burdens when deciding whether to move forward with the discretionary air quality control reconsideration?
Absolutely. I think that we absolutely do a cost-benefit analysis for all of these rules, and PM 2.5 and ozone are obviously different regulations here, but this one that we've proposed, and we're still having a conversation, we proposed it, we're taking comment, would avoid about 4,300 premature deaths and get a lot of lost work days, and we believe the technology exists to do this. So there is a cost.
But aren't you concerned? I mean, you know, we got inflation, we've got, and you, again, you were there last week, you saw our economy's buzzing down there. We're doing great, and I don't want that to be deterred at all, and I'm concerned that this is going to do it.
Well, and that's, I was there at the Port of Georgia for a reason, which is that port is demonstrating that they are well-positioned for a significant chunk of that $4 billion that we announced from the Inflation Reduction Act. Those types of announcements that we're making to use those resources will help ports and communities all across the country comply with these regulations. The goal is to have our regulations be complementary of the resources that we're getting from these technologies.
And I admire that goal, but let's please make sure that we don't inadvertently or unwittingly do just the opposite and deter growth. I want to get real quickly to brownfields, because I've got quite a few brownfields in my district, particularly in the southernmost part of my district in Glenn County. You mentioned the Justice 40 requirements. Can you tell me about those? How are the conditioning grants based on Justice 40 requirements?
Well, and based on the money from Bill, 40% of the benefits that result from the bipartisan infrastructure law must go into communities that have been described as disadvantaged or disproportionately impacted or low income. and 40% of the resources that come from the federal government will prioritize those disadvantaged communities.
We've got a real concern with brownfields. And this has been going on so long, I get so frustrated. These brownfields that I'm talking about in my district have been on the books for over 20 years, 2 decades. I'm going to follow up with some questions. I'm out of time, but thank you very much again for being here, and thank you again for visiting the district.
Absolutely.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Ruiz, for 5